Hi, my name is David, and I'm an alcoholic. I'm living life in recovery now, right? Thanks for joining in. We're here to talk about the Second Beatitude. Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. At first blush, this seems pretty simple. So we hear phrases like, hey, I heard your spouse passed away. We are so sorry for your loss. Or I heard your company got bought out. You got to find another job now. Man, I'm sorry to hear that for you. That sort of thing. It's always heartfelt, there's no doubt. We all suffer losses in our life. It's like first we feel a pang, and then it hurts. We sniffle a little bit, and then we just sort of soldier on. That's what we're taught to do, so that's what we do. Well, I don't think loss is so easy of an experience that we can always just suck it up, and like move on to the next day. I don't think Jesus of Nazareth was talking about that sort of thing when he talked about mourning in the Sermon on the Mount either. So let's talk about mourning now. The Beatitudes, very cryptic. They tend to condense a whole lot of content into just a word or two. Like the word mourn. The things that we mourn are losses, right? And when we suffer a serious loss, we're talking about a serious loss, right? If we don't tend to it at the level of how we internalize it, that emotion can linger. And this can affect our judgment and our intentions across a spectrum of very deep levels inside of us. In a nutshell, these lingering feelings can foster and lead to lasting character defects. And I believe that other than the obvious, what the Beatitude is saying here is this: how we mourn and what we mourn, that really matters. What are some serious losses that we suffer in life? Well, here's a set of examples. The loss of a parent or a sibling. Even worse, a loss like that when it's a sudden, inexplicable loss. The loss of our party life that we had before we quit partying, that to me was kind of a friend in my life. The loss of a real close friendship, and even the loss of a beloved pet. Another, different but terrible type of loss is the loss of self-dignity and self-esteem due to chronic abuse as a young person. And we hear about that in meetings, don't we? No doubt we could go on. We could identify lots more categories of loss. The issue at hand, though, is that these deep emotions can lead to the following emotional responses: guilt, anger, resentment, self-pity, inner role confusion or conflict, which mixes anger and guilt, or just plain out-and-out fear. We alcoholics and addicts recognize these emotions in people when they speak up at meetings or their sponsor notices. Some are sad, some are tragic, some are just downright catastrophic. But all these factors are prone to lead to deep-seated character defects and the temptation to drink or to use again and to exercise crazy, self-destructive behavior. And then the craziest thing is we repeat that behavior over and over again. We repeat that crazy behavior all as a way to cover up the pain that we feel. Okay, so now let's switch over to the second part of the Beatitude. For they shall be comforted. Going back to the original Greek, a more precise translation would be, for they shall be consoled. Normally, when serious losses occur, we seek consolation from a number of sources. From friends and family, for sure. Sometimes, often, from professionals like grief counselors or psychologists. Many people turn to the haven of the church. They seek help through their priest or a minister or their rabbi. But in AAC, we have unique additional sources that help to console us. We have the fellowship of our group. We no longer have to feel so alone when we're feeling lost or ashamed or bitter. We can take consolation from the stories of experience, strength, and hope that we hear over and over again in meetings. These stories that we hear, they have an added reason to be such a huge benefit to us. It's because we hear those stories in connection with our own diseases of addiction to alcohol and drugs. Because that's where we have experience in common. We get it. We can listen and connect these stories to our own situations where terrible losses have made us seek out relief from our pain by relying on alcohol and drugs and that crazy, outlandish, self-destructive behavior, going way back in time and affecting us for years on end in our lives. In a way, just by actively participating in our program of sobriety, we're giving ourselves the benefit of being consoled for the cruel pains of loss or suffering. In my experience, these pains and our defects can be so deep and so embedded in our character that we're barely aware of their impact on us. All too likely, we're not aware of their impact at all. They've been around so long that it's like they're just another part of us. They become normal. And here's where I believe the deepest value of the 4th and 5th, and then the 8th and 9th steps enter in. It happened to me in my life, and I have to believe that it's happened in the lives of many of us, that in the process of doing diligent work on these steps, I mean really putting in the work, some of these very old, very deep, very dark underlying causes that drive us to turn to alcohol and drugs, they begin to reveal themselves to us. These moments of recognition, I believe, are the doorstep to self-awareness, and they can be the breadcrumbs that lead us back to these wrenching, buried, underlying causes so that we can finally put a face on them and work toward what the 9th step promises that we will no longer regret the past nor wish to shut the door on these causes, that we own these underlying causes now, and this gives us a sense of freedom. This finally allows us to work in a meaningful way on our most troublesome character defect. This finally allows us to find some blessed peace and serenity from these terrible things that have bedeviled our lives for so doggone long. I've talked about the Beatitudes as a code of ethics. For the moment, it's enough to say that Jesus spoke to what makes a person's behavior virtuous, or what makes a person's behavior righteous in the 8 Beatitudes. An essential part of the process of becoming a more virtuous person is to grow in understanding of oneself, to address our moral weaknesses, and to bolster our moral strengths. And what we've talked about here, seeking out underlying causes and following the 12 steps to make essential improvements, this is fundamental, this is foundational to making spiritual progress and moving ahead toward our own fantastic spiritual awakening. Thanks for tuning in. And the third Beatitude will be coming up real soon. Thanks.